We are live on Riverside for the Greek chorus. We are live on Twitch, where nobody ever watches us. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Substack. We are live on Facebook. And we are live on
How do you do
Instagram.
that? I'm glad I got out of bed.
Yeah, uh, we are live everywhere. And I want to tell you why we are live everywhere. And it is because everywhere we are live, everywhere that I have followers who might want to
Oh,
know all the details
yes.
of my I don't, maybe we're not live on Instagram. I'm not sure. But we
Instagram
are
is
li-
beneath you. I hate Instagram.
we
Don't
are
do
live everywhere else. Um, um, folks, it is Thursday, March 19th, the year of our Lord 2026. It is 8 o'clock a.m. We are awaiting the arrival of the estimable Anna Bauer, who will be here, and we are devoting the episode today to the trial of Lord Laser, Lady Laser, and myself, Benjamin Wittes. Yesterday, I hope you guys all saw my Get Ready With Me video. And, folks, it was justice prevailed. We, uh, a lot of good was done. And so we are going to debrief. And we're going to debrief as soon as Anna gets here. But there's something I have to tell you first. The sun kind of not shining in Washington. The birds, however, are chirping, and it is going to be a great fucking day. And why, you ask?
Oh,
You're watching Dog Shirt TV, a forking revolution in morning television. Dog Shirt TV, a forking revolution in
in the
morning
round
television.
today. In the
You are
round.
watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a forking revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, and there are a bunch of them, is that, when I go on trial for serious offenses against the public order, uh, I can't live stream them because, you can't put your phone on in and live stream from federal court. And so we have to debrief later, but we're going to do it. And that's what today is all about. And another one of the revolutionary features, because as I say, there are a bunch of them, is that sometimes when we have a show that we're going to devote to a serious subject, like the trial of moi, um, we end up with having to keep Holly Berkeley Fletcher in suspense for the entire show because I have promised her that I have cactus gossip for her. And but we're gonna wait until we get to the end of the show, and we will end the show with some rip roaring cactus gossip involving money laundering, crimes against cactuses, cactusing your arms. It's going to be so. Do not wait. Do not leave before the end of the show, or you may miss the cactus gossip, all of which is a 4 minute long winded way of saying that we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to uh, talk about one of the weirdest judicial proceedings I've ever been to with Anna Bauer
Saying
and
a
Holly.
lot.
I've been to a bunch of them, but I've never been to one quite like this. And Anna, are you there and audible? I can't see you, but I do sense your presence.
I am here. Sorry, I had to go get some of my chamomile tea
Yeah,
because I.
Anna and I are both a little bit under the weather. I very much hope we both spread bugs around to not the other defendants in yesterday's hearing because they seemed like very nice people, but to the jerks who were making everybody be there, may you acquire whatever bug I am currently suffering from, and whatever bug Anna is currently suffering from. So, John Hawkinson asks the key question, um, and it leads to a bunch of other questions. So, first of all, Anna, what were you doing there?
Well, I was covering it because we are a journalistic organization and I'm a court reporter. And so I thought it'd be interesting to go and cover my boss's uh, whatever that was. What do we even call it?
Yeah,
What
what
like
was it?
initial appearance? But it was like what even was that? That's what I need to know because it's really not clear and there was no judge.
Right. That was the first thing that was odd about it, was that it was in the courtroom of Magistrate Judge Faruqi, for whom I have high regard, and who, by the way, is a lawfare writer. But there
We
was
should
no
say
sign.
before prior to becoming a magistrate judge.
Correct. But
Yes.
there was no sign of Magistrate Judge Faruqi.
No.
Um,
And at first I wondered if it was because when we showed up there I wondered if things were delayed because of this emergency situation that was going on 3rd Street. All of 3rd Street got closed down and nothing was happening in court, although the appearance time was supposed to be set for 9. And I was like, oh no, I hope everything's okay. Like, did they evacuate the judges? Are things just proceeding for some reason without the judge? But it turns out no, the judge just doesn't appear.
Right. So that was the first weird thing. So why don't you just start by describing the appearance, the proceeding?
So it all like keep in mind one reason that this was so weird is not because things like this don't happen in courts across the country all the time. It's just that it usually happens in like state court or traffic court. This is United States District Court, federal court in Washington, D.C. That handles some of the most, serious cases in the country. There's a saying, don't make a federal case out of it. And the reason that people say that is because, you don't, there's kind of like a seriousness attached to federal cases that don't necessarily, I mean, obviously there can be very serious state court cases, but there's a reason that people say that. Sorry, I'm just turning my alarm off. And we go in though to this courtroom, and it again very much reminds me of state court. This part of it wasn't very weird though, where there's just a bunch of people who have been summoned to court who are there for, to have their initial appearance.
And they're almost all vendors of some kind who did something on the mall. I felt terrible for them because just as the park police had seized Lord Laser, they'd seized their vending trucks. And so, these guys have been like, this is their livelihood. And, and so there was like a Hispanic corner, there's a local DC Black corner, there's a Urdu speaking corner, there's an Arabic speaking corner, and all of these poor guys have like, and I'm there. There's one other person who's there because he did something to the monument other than sell something. We'll get to him in a moment.
Yeah, that guy and like that guy's wearing a suit. and so it's just this
And came
guy-
in from Buffalo
yeah,
because he had a mandatory court appearance.
So there's this like collection of various different people who are like of various different backgrounds, dressed in varying ways. If anybody wants to know, no, Ben did not wear a dog shirt. Ben, do you want to tell people what you wore?
Well, I assume everyone here has watched my Get Ready With Me
Okay.
video. But I wore a Vishivanka, and today, by the way, I'm wearing Vishivanka jacket and dog shirt underneath. So,
Love it.
which I really like that look. But yeah, no, today I was wearing a Vishivanka and a jacket. I thought I looked sharp, very respectful of the court. There were some people there who I don't think dressed appropriately to the court, to appearing in federal court, but I'm not a fashion critic, so.
Anyway, so there's a group of people sitting in the gallery. The AUSA, which I still am not entirely sure what his name was. I think his last name was Cole.
Emery Cole.
We're sure it was Emery Cole?
Emery spelled EMORY,
Okay.
I believe.
Because I saw a picture of him online and I didn't think it looked like the guy that we saw yesterday, but I didn't only saw the back of his head really. But anyway, okay. Well, point is, a gentleman whose last name was Cole, potentially first name Emery, was the DOJ representative there with two of his paralegals. And they're seated at the table that's in the center. Like usually you'll have DOJ on one side and then, opposing counsel on the other, right before where the judge sits. And he's seated there at this table with law enforcement officers. And they were park police, right, Ben?
Yes.
Yeah. And the park police are seated there with DOJ, and DOJ has, he's got his computer out. And one by one, they call people up, and I'm thinking like, oh, are they just gonna have a preliminary discussion before the judge comes in? What's going on here? But it turns out, no, the whole proceeding is just with no judge, and people start going up one by one. You can hear little snippets of conversation, and most people aren't represented by counsel, and the judge will kind of read the report out to the person, or excuse me, the DOJ person, Cole would read the report out to this person, and then they would, by and large, just kind of admit to the conduct, which was interesting. And then he would say, okay, it's going to be, 100 whatever bucks. I'm going to give you this fine and you can pay it and we don't have to come back here. And most people would agree to that. And that was kind of it, wasn't it, Ben? Until we got to you.
Yeah, I mean, there was one other person I was ninth. There was one other person who was represented by counsel and they're all admitting to crimes, or at least they're admitting to activity that could be prosecuted as a misdemeanor. And they're all doing it under the threat of having to come back, and actually have a misdemeanor trial. And so they're all agreeing. And they're, I don't know what the magnitude of any of those fines were. In my case, it was quite reasonable, but it does have the air of a kind of extortion racket for, some of these guys that, I don't know how serious any of their infractions were, but I was not comfortable with the fact that first of all, you're sitting in a courtroom and there's no court proceeding, right? So it's kind of like a fraud court. Like there's no magistrate judge, and if you want a judge, you have to go through trial, right? It's not a preliminary appearance in the this is your chance to avoid trial. And And I really was uncomfortable with the number of people who were unrepresented, to be
It was
honest.
more like a plea agreement at conference rather than a
Exactly.
it was so strange because it was like you've been summoned to a judicial proceeding. Like what's weird about it is the fact that you get the impression that it is a judicial proceeding from the summons that you get. You know, it's in a ostensibly public courtroom, but the microphones aren't on and I can't hear in the gallery what is being said by DOJ to these defendants or ostensible defendants. I don't even know.
Yeah, so describe what happened when we went up there. So when we went up there, I want to do this without, you know, I don't think there's any harm with waiving privilege, but I don't want to do it. So, um, m- my lawyer and I instructed Anna so that she would be able to hear the proceeding. When we go up there, you come with us and we will introduce you as a journalist. And so we were very intentionally not hiding the ball about who Anna was, but it seemed like if this is a court proceeding, we should, like, it should be an open court proceeding and it should be, you know, like any other court proceeding.
Yeah, and typically a journalist would never go into the well of the court. That's like the area where you know, the council sits past the gallery. But at least I think that's the name that we call it, right, Ben? The well? I don't know.
Yes.
But in this situation, there was no judge. And so usually the person who's telling people like don't come into the well, it's the judge who has the authority to say, or like the marshal to say like don't go past that area. And in this situation, because it was the microphones weren't on, you couldn't hear anything. To cover this public proceeding, you had to be closer to the proceeding in order to like take notes on it and to hear what was actually happening. So my perspective was, you know, it's tantamount to basically having a judicial proceeding in which you turn the husher on for the whole time.
Right.
It's
Right.
closing the courtroom effectively. And
John, you had a
I want to
question.
confirm what seems to be implied but wasn't explicitly stated, which is not only was there's no judge, there was also no clerk.
So there was a woman from the clerk's office who was there some of the time, but she flitted in and out as she saw fit, and there was no court reporter. So there's
There
no
was a-
record.
There was a woman who would like do entries for the tickets. Like after
Right.
like after DOJ would get people to agree to just pay the fine because they didn't want to come back, then he would instruct the person sitting at the computer like, "Oh, this is what they're going to do," kind of thing. And then she would type in like an entry related to that. So, but it was all just very strange. And again, there's a presumption of public access to court proceedings, and there's a First Amendment right of access for the public and the press. And so I didn't think that it was particularly controversial that I would go up and stand behind them and write on my notepad. I had clearly identified press credentials, like I'm a member of the press corps at Prettyman. And so it just didn't seem to be that big of a deal to me. So we go up, Ben's counsel introduces me as a journalist, and DOJ, I think it's fair to say that he kind of like lost it a little bit as soon as he heard that I'm a journalist and that I want to be up there to take notes. He said something to the effect of, and
He
this
kind
was
of
all,
yelled at us
yeah,
about it.
he yelled and he said, "There are no journalists up here at the table." And he was like, and he said something to the effect of, "This is supposed to be a relaxed proceeding." And then
It's
and
like
he
you're threatening to prosecute me. Why? Why is it like? Why should I be relaxed about that?
and I mean he's yelling and I really I knew that I could hear if I stood really close to the gate. right before you get to the well. So the balance of things to me struck as, maybe he's about to instruct the cops to like arrest me and throw me out of court, or I could just agree to stand, right at the gate and try to listen in. So I said to him, like, I'm happy to stand right over there in the gallery, but I'd ask that you turn your microphones on so that I can hear, because this is a public proceeding, a public courtroom proceeding. Unfortunately, I can't hear if you don't have your microphones on. And he said no.
Right.
And kept, kind of yelling and grumbling about this, and was like, no journalists, no journalists. And it was just, it was frankly like really disturbing.
I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a situation in which this is a federal courtroom in which there is no judge, the prosecutor is in charge of the proceeding, and he's refusing to let a journalist cover the proceeding. And there's a kind of like intimidation racket going on with respect to, I think, sort of like everybody in the room except me, because I was there kind of like, it was fine with me if I had to go to trial. And, but like, there was no leverage over me. But I was, I think, like the only person in the room that there was no leverage over.
It was real, and the way that they were talking to people that I could hear was very mafia tactics, like sounding. It was, there was kind of like just a lot of like, then you don't have to come back here. You don't want to come back here, do you? Kind of things. And it was just really uncomfortable. So to get back to Ben's proceeding, though, I go and stand, and I mean, I am leaning. It's hilarious because I'm only like 5 feet further away than I was before when they insisted that I couldn't possibly get any closer to them than that. But I'm like, having a little bit of trouble hearing, so I'm leaning over the gate that where you go from the gallery into the well. And it's just hilarious because I like got my notepad and I'm leaning as close as I can to hear. And then what happens next, Ben? Do you want to tell, because you had the best firsthand experience of it, but
Yeah, so a little bit of background is necessary for this thing. So the first thing is, when they detained me, they also detained a friend of mine who had committed the iniquitous crime of not running away when the cops showed up. And I had insisted that all the Ukrainians present get out of there because I don't want anybody to have problems with ICE. But John is not Ukrainian, and so he stayed, which was very honorable, and I appreciated it. But John was not operating projectors. He did not own any of the projectors. The camera equipment was all mine. And I think it's fair to say that if there were such a thing as aiding and abetting conspiracy liability for a misdemeanor, John may have had exposure in that regard, but there's no such thing. And if the charge was that he was projecting on a monument, that charge is actually false. He was not. I was, and nobody else was. And so this prosecutor told me that the cost of my not having to go to trial would be $100 civil fine, which I like from the beginning. My point, my bottom line was, number one, I'm happy to pay a fine. I'm not happy to have a criminal conviction. Number two, I want my stuff back. And number three, I want the charges dropped against John. Those were my three red lines. And so the moment I heard that they wanted to resolve this on the basis of $100 fine, I knew we were fine, and they didn't. So my big concern about this proceeding would be that Janine Pirro would see it as a sandwich man like opportunity to make trouble for somebody. Um and so the moment, like, and it didn't help that the prosecutor had been impossible for my lawyer to reach for 7 months. And so, I we thought there was I don't know, like 20% chance that they were going to want to prosecute this, 15% chance. And so the moment I heard that they were happy to resolve it on the basis of a civil fine, I was like, fine, I'll pay whatever civil fine you want. And I was actually very surprised at how cheap it was. I think, $100 plus $30 in court costs is, less than I spend on most special military operations for, wear and tear on equipment. So, but I did want to verify that I got the stuff back. And I did want to put it on the record that the cops were wrong about John, because I actually think showing up with 8 or 10 police cars, which is what they did, with the lights screaming and yelling at a whole bunch of people very belligerently and not bothering to make a distinction between people who are actually committing an infraction. And yeah, let me admit it now. I was projecting on the Washington Monument, and it turned out, unbeknownst to me, in violation of a reg. I had done it before. I'd never made a secret of the fact that I was doing it. I'm not ashamed of it, but it was in violation of a reg. John was not projecting on the Washington Monument. He was standing next to me while I projected on the monument and occasionally holding things for me while I did stuff. So I did feel like, if police are going to be that indiscriminate and then not listen to you when you try very patiently to say, I'm responsible for this, he's not. It's important in court to say, the cops got this wrong. And so I kind of wanted to put it on the record and to force them to drop the matter against John, which they did. And I thought once the prosecutor stopped yelling at me and yelling at Anna and yelling at my lawyer, he was pretty reasonable about it. And so the last thing that got us hung up was that my lawyer, who, by the way, if you run into a protest law issue, Mark Goldstone he has a specialty in protest law and represents everybody from, like Antifa people and LGBTQ protesters who get in trouble with things to people like me. And I was very appreciative of his help on this. He felt that there were substantial First Amendment issues here, and if we're going to resolve it on the basis of a civil fine, they should actually come down from the $100 fine. And so there was some argument about whether they would come down to $50, which I eventually stopped because, frankly, I don't think there's a big distinction between a $100 fine in principle and a $50 fine in principle. So that was the end of it, and we resolved it on the basis that I will pay $130, and I'm not allowed to pay it for about a week, because it takes about a week or two to go from the court into the system. And so I have a little slip of paper that says I've agreed to pay this fine, but I can't pay it until I can't pay it for a week or two. after I pay it, the park police will give me back my property, including Lord and Lady Laser. So hence the title of the Dog Shirt Daily post, that this is a writ of habeas corpus for Lord and Lady Laser. And that's the end of it, I think.
I have a question, it seems, unless someone is either impersonating your lawyer or is actually your lawyer in the
No,
chat.
I sent him a link, so that
Oh,
I have
okay.
no
Well,
reason to think that
He
isn't
should come
actually
on,
Mark.
so maybe he can speak to this issue. Like, how normal is this? Like, people just show up and then pay fines and then leave? Is this like a normal thing that
Yeah, so Mark,
routinely
if you want to come on and talk about whether you've seen anything like that before in your career, I found it upsetting. Like I was uh there was something um there was something it was less coercive vis-a-vis me, because in fact I could go to trial if I wanted to. And but like a bunch of these guys are just guys with carts, and I'm sure they committed some infraction, but they're there without counsel. And well, Anna, why don't you tell about the other guy who was there for improper communing with a monument?
Oh yeah, there's a guy who put his hand on the monument, and from what I could
On the
tell,
Lincoln Memorial. He just went up and touched
yes,
it.
that's right, the Lincoln Memorial. So the way he told it, and I'm sitting there like, oh no, don't tell DOJ this stuff. Just like, I don't know. He gets up there, and I can overhear bits and pieces of the conversation. He came down from Buffalo, you said, Ben?
Yeah, because he had a summons that said
Yes.
mandatory court appearance, and the prosecutor was like, "You're here from Buffalo for this?" And I almost like screamed at him, "What do you mean? Of course he's here. You sent him a fucking summons."
Yeah, and the reason why he has a summons is because he came down several months ago to DC. I think he said it was his first time in DC, and he was visiting a buddy who was going through a hard time. And they went to the Lincoln Memorial, and he like ran up the steps, and I guess they were in front of the Lincoln Memorial. He decided to reach out and touch it. And
And to be fair,
you can't like the statue or
I
what?
don't know. He got a
Because
citation
obviously you can
and a
touch the
mandatory.
memorial.
And they,
No,
and they
I
gave
think
him a mandatory court appearance. Why didn't they just say like $30 fine? You can pay it and not show up.
But I hear him telling them like, and so then I reached out and I just put my hand on it, like, and I'm like, why did they give this man a citation for touching?
Yeah, you would just normally say, "Sir, don't touch. You can't touch the statue," and that's the end of that.
It was crazy. And so then they were like, "Oh, so your friend's in trouble, or your friend was in trouble. Like, what was going on?" And they kind of asked him about it, and he says, he says something that I couldn't hear, and then he made a joke like, "Now I've gotten myself in trouble," and I was like, "Oh no." Just
I do think they dropped it against him.
I think they did. I couldn't hear the resolution, so I don't know ultimately what the outcome was. But it was
I
one of the
haven't
more
touched the statue,
interesting.
but I've certainly touched the column. The columns.
Well, so Devin Nunes's lawyer here raises what I think is the actual real issue. So the reason this was a stressful situation for me was that Jeanine Pirro is in charge of that office. And I don't have any reason to think Jeanine Pirro has it in for me or anything. In fact, the one time we've interacted, which was during the Trump trial, I dare say we got along just fine, although
You gotta tell that story.
Okay, now that she can't prosecute me, I will tell the story. Yeah, so one day during the Trump trial, I find myself sitting in court next to Jeanine Pirro. And I swear I am not making any of this up, because I am actually a person without substantial imagination. I don't think I could make this up. Um, so we're sitting there, and she is surrounded by very young, very pretty assistants who, like they're clearly like a type that she collects around her. And she has these pictures of her froofy dogs that she is showing. That she's apparently very serious about froofy dogs. And she's sharing grooming pictures with, and the dogs were cute. And she and I had a nice little conversation about dogs, although I don't think she approved of the fact that my dogs are mutts.
Yeah, and
Um,
you were wearing your dog shirt in
I
court.
was wearing a dog
Right.
shirt because it was court, and I always dress appropriately to court. So, anyway, later on, she opens her notebook, and I look down, and she's got colored pens that she's writing in her notebook with, like a fifth grader or something. And I look down, and she's written in this perfect kind of schoolgirl handwriting, like, what a cast of characters! Exclamation mark. Soros-backed DA! Exclamation mark. Corrupt, corrupt bought and paid for judge! Exclamation mark. And Janine Pirro, if you're watching this and you think I'm being unfair, release your notes. Because I know that page is in your Trump trial notebook.
But what's so funny about it is like that was after like an entire day of substantive trial.
Yes, and of course those are the talking points like that they got like every day. So she went all the way to court to conclude that her talking points were exactly right. These were her conclusions. Okay. I think that's it, right? Is there more we should go over from the day, Anna?
No, but I do want to say it did really give such a vibe of state court proceedings. And it was just all very strange to me as someone who has spent a lot of time in state court, especially in law school when I was working in state criminal courts. And like to that end, it seemed very normal, but it was just very incongruous because it's like this was federal court.
Right.
And my experience in federal court is that stuff like that does not happen and it was all just very strange.
So yeah, I mean, a serious point in all of this. Not that this point wasn't, but like I don't think it's a terrible thing to have a pretrial conversation before you do, but like, don't do that in a courtroom. Don't do that. Don't call it a judicial proceeding. And don't have a situation in which, you know, you're really not available to have a conversation about a matter that could be a criminal matter for a lot of people until an initial appearance in which you're doing in a courtroom without a record and in a pretty coercive environment. And so I look, it was not a harm in my case, and I don't think that there's I don't think any injustice was done me. But I did not think the environment was a good one or a fair one. And at a minimum, the discussions that were happened yesterday should be in the prosecutor's office or in a conference room without the trappings of a courtroom. Yeah, that's my bottom line after my day in court.
So chat was wondering what your sort of takeaways are from this experience for future projections. And also Lord and Lazy, Lord and Lazy, Lord and Lord and Lady, although they've been very lazy, they've just been like chilling
Well,
somewhere in
they've
a
been
locker.
imprisoned. I don't think that's
Yeah.
laziness. Don't blame the
Well,
victim.
okay, we'll see. We'll see what they've been doing in prison. But the Lord and Lady Laser, that turns out it's quite hard to say, as
Yes.
it, um, are they going to be making a glorious return to duty now that you have the Gobo or whatever you called the other one?
Yeah, so I and two additional Gobo projectors did arrive at my house coincidentally the other day. And
Phalanx of
yeah, it's
projector.
a whole phalanx of projectors now. So, for a number of reasons, I am going to move away from projections with lasers. And the main reason is that I have developed certain safety concerns about them. And I think that they can be operated safely, but I prefer if I can project using other means to use other means. And so I will be using the lasers sparingly and only in circumstances in which I am sure I can control the circumstances of their output. And the specific concern is blinding people. Um, and so, yes, they will be returned. Yes, they will have a glorious return, but I am likely to ease them into retirement, or at least into circumstances of into a into not using them in high pressure situations where they could get bumped.
That's just what happened to me. I was eased
Eased into retirement.
into non-high pressure situations.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, and we can talk about what the specific concern is, but I've had a couple of incidents with them that have alarmed me a little bit, and I really don't want to injure anybody. So that is the future of them. The other thing is that they are very flexible. They're great for writing on walls. They are not great for projecting full color, complex images, right? And the experience of the Putin death head, where you can really put a whole beautiful slide up on the wall, I'm kind of excited about that. And so my goal right now is to have an array of projectors, each with a different slide, so that you can kind of go between them. So that's the concept.
Can you not
And
change the slides easily?
you can, but it works better if you don't have to.
Oh.
And so, like, if you have 3 projectors going and one of the ones that's not on, you're changing the slide, then you can have as many images as you want.
Okay.
So
Cool.
that is the future of Lord and Lady Laser. As to my lessons about this for purposes of future projections, I will not be projecting on the Washington Monument again. I did not know that there was a specific reg that forbid it. And I didn't intentionally violate that reg. And now that I know it exists, I won't be violating it intentionally again. My view as a general matter is that it is almost impossible to figure out, other than by doing it, whether a given building is or is not legal to project on. And every organization that is a law enforcement organization in Washington, D.C., except the Park Police once, has taken the view that if they come upon you projecting in a place that they don't consider legal, they tell you to shut it off. And I comply. This was the exception. And so I plan to keep doing what I've been doing, which is not doing projections that I know to be illegal, but not breaking my back to do legal research building by building and assuming that cops will be reasonable if they come upon me projecting on a building that they don't think is appropriate. So that's what I'm going to do. I have said that I'm planning to uh, project on the FBI building. Nobody at the FBI has told me that they think that's illegal. And I also feel that, as I said about the Trump banner at the Department of Agriculture, if you're going to hang "Dear Leader" banners on buildings in my town, expect me to have something to say about that. And I want to draw Pam Bondi's attention to that specifically with respect to the Justice Department. And so, look, any one of those is something that somebody could consider illegal, and someday I'm going to get actually arrested and charged, and that's fine. I'm ready for that whenever it happens.
Mark
As-
has got you.
As long as Mark will represent me and Anna will come and cover the proceeding.
I'm happy to.
Um,
I
And
love covering my boss's criminal proceedings.
I was gonna say, I think Anna has better things to do, but than cover all your criminal proceedings. But if
I
you
don't know. I've
wanna-
never had a
you're
criminal
her
proceeding.
boss, so
I mean, I
Let
did
the
it
record
yesterday.
reflect that I did not demand that she cover this. I merely asked if she wanted to.
No, he just sent me the summons and I just said, "Oh, okay, I'll come cover it."
Um,
So,
and are you writing a dispatch about it?
well, I haven't gone around to it yet because my head was hurting too much last night to write. But I'm going to try to. It may not be imminent today. But yes is the answer, I believe.
Well,
maybe you should write something about like who are the microphones in the in the federal court? Like what is that acronym? We mode or something.
Oh, I see. Yes. Though, or like, where are the why aren't the
where's the
microphones
judge?
on? What is that acronym?
You knew who the judge was. You just didn't know where the judge was.
Yeah. Where is who is the administrator of the courtroom?
There you go.
That's what the acronym is.
Yeah, I knew there was something in there. I just didn't have the expertise to come up with it.
Yeah. But,
all right.
all right.
Should we turn to cactus gossip, Holly?
Yes.
All right. So I come back yesterday to Brookings, and I'm going to keep her name out of this just because I don't really think it's not a private conversation,
The
but
cactus need to be involved.
yeah. So the cactuses need to hear the cactus.
They're so interested. Look at this. How interested they are. Their eyes are just bugging out with fascination.
So I come back to Brookings and I run into this research assistant whose name I won't mention. And as many of you know, when I run into somebody, I will often greet them with the question, "What's news and gossip?" And the last time I had run into her, she had not had any gossip. And I wagged my finger at her and I told her, the next time I run into you, I expect you to have proper gossip. And so I run into her and I tell her the gossip that I have been freed from the clutches of federal law enforcement. And she smiles and says, "Well, I have cactus gossip for you." And she tells me the following thing. And I have verified none of this. So this, in fact,
It's
falls
truly
into the
gossip.
category of gossip.
Gossip, not news.
She informs me that, and I did not know this, that big cactuses are extremely expensive because they take a very long time to grow. And they have become valuable in China. And therefore, there is a black market in stolen cactuses.
Wow.
And that Mexican cartels are using cactuses for money laundering because you gather a bunch of stolen cactuses and you can ship them places and it's actually worth a lot of money.
Seems like in
Um,
Mexico you could just go dig some up.
well, that's the point, that they are now stealing cactuses from
Of the
Arizona.
landscape. Oh, I see.
And there are valuable cactuses that are being dug up and used in money laundering schemes. And by the way, just to be clear, I have no idea if any of this is true. This is gossip.
I mean, it sounds plausible.
And what she told me is that there was this company in Arizona that had developed the ability to microchip the cactuses.
Oh,
And they put the microchips in the cactuses, and then if you move the cactus, the microchip activates. And hello, Lucy the dog.
Hello.
And the microchip activates and notifies, a company that, your cactus has been stolen. All right, so here is where the story gets weird. The microchips were too sensitive. And the first night that the system was activated, there was wind in the desert, and the cactuses swayed, and hundreds of microchips went off at the same time. And it was like reported as a mass theft of cactuses. And so now they have had to recalibrate the cactuses, the microchips, so that they're not too quick to report stolen cactuses.
good grief. Like, who knew? Who knew?
So the answer to all questions about this from John Hawkinson and others is that I have no idea, because all I know about this is from a single unchecked Brookings cafeteria conversation that was explicitly framed as cactus gossip. But I immediately upon hearing this, thought Holly needs to know the cactus gossip, and the
fascinating.
cactuses need to know the cactus gossip.
I have to say, and I hope this doesn't sound prejudicial or bigoted in any way. It's just an observation. But in China, there is a demand for all kinds of weird shit that fuels crime around the world. Like the whole
Rhinoceros horn.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
they're the only country really that must have rhino horn, and this creates a whole lot of trouble, I have to say. And so who knew
Well, but
that?
to be fair, we're not very different from that. I mean, for us, it's conflict diamonds and emeralds, and I mean, we generate
guess
our
we-
particular.
True. That's what I said. It's obviously this is a good example of how bias becomes prejudice. Actually, I've just
Right.
demonstrated it. It's like we've just assumed that diamonds are valuable, just like the Chinese have assumed that rhino horn is valuable and cacti are valuable. But anyway,
Well, I do want to say on behalf of the cactuses, let's leave the cactuses alone, people. They're big, they're old, they don't want to move.
just like me, I relate. Leave me alone too. Leave me alone.
Andrew Steele, soulless attorney. I'm glad you're here because we have a slight Samara issue that might cause us to want to move it, which is that I am starting to lose my voice, and I am not confident that I'm going to have a voice this
Also,
weekend.
I think you're signed up for Solid Core on Sunday evening. No, it's Sunday afternoon. Sorry, never mind.
I am the Solid Core can be moved, but
No.
if I'm sick, I'm not going to want to do an evening thing. And so, Andrew, can we push this one more week?
Yeah, definitely. So that would be, I think, the 29th. I can update the Substack post here. But But yep, I glad to do that. I put together the usual discussion guide. Also, sorry if you can hear the background noise. There's actually a jackhammer outside
No,
my
we're
window.
good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's great. They'll be super fun to discuss. Everyone should join and bring their family and friends and dogs. But then I'll put it as March 29th at 5 p.m. maybe.
Excellent. Let's do
Okay,
that.
cool.
And
Great.
and it may end up being a false alarm. I may be absolutely fine and voiceful by Sunday, but I am feverish and definitely in the sore throat, getting ready to lose my voice department now.
Cool.
Can oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh no, it's not. I'll say it after you guys deal with the important matters of scheduling things.
Well, it's just that the March 29th is the day after the next No Kings protest, March 28th. So if you're going to be out there, you might lose your voice again if you're engaged in protest activities or something like that.
Well, I will say I encourage everybody to go to their local No Kings protest. I will certainly go. I don't tend to yell much at protests, but I will go in a inflatable frog costume. And one thing, a reminder about what this Mara Shorts is. This is a discussion of two plays of Antigone, one by Sophocles and the other by Jean Anouilh. You can read both of them in a single sitting, and they are both super interesting plays. And so that will be on the 29th at 5 p.m. And yes, John, I will add it to the calendar, which I neglected to do. Anna, you get the last word today.
Oh, I certainly don't wish you to get any more sick, but if you do, I hope that your voice sounds like mine did last week.
Anna's voice last week was like it was a treasure. And I have to say, Anna, the most charming thing about it was that you actually were afraid that it was going to freeze like that and never come back.
I genuinely was afraid that it was going to stay like that because it just would not go away. And it was hilarious because I was working, doing reporting with with my colleague Molly Roberts on our draft elections executive order piece that we published. And I had to call multiple people to do interviews with that voice.
It was awesome.
And they were like, "Are you okay?" It was not a good situation. But yeah.
All right, folks. We're going to be back tomorrow. Unless I cancel the show because I can't speak. But
at some point, I will have to debrief everyone on my southern trip.
Well, that's going to happen tomorrow.
And roll out my my southern accent. Maybe Anna. It's better than Anna's. Anna doesn't even have an accent, and she's from the South. So.
I know. I can code switch though and like put a southern accent on.
All right, let's hear it.
We had a good time.
I got it. It's contextual. I've got to be
talking to
hometown, talking to like the person at the local biscuit shop. Like that's got to be the situation.
Well, after
mom, I do it with my mom too because she's got a real southern accent.
After a week down there, Kevin and I decided that we missed the boat. We should have had 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys, and named them Savannah, Magnolia, Charleston, and Beaufort.
Okay, that's a very South Carolina type of names. The new thing in like my like rural hometown in Georgia is like these like totally made up names.
That's not like the South thing. That's a Gen Z parenting. That's a millennial parenting thing.
They're all like Breck Line or Bray Lynn or Bry Lee
or
like
Mark Wayne.
I mean Mark Wayne, but like I'm talking like that's at least two actual like
Wayne.
names that are just kind of put together, right?
Right.
I'm talking like the weirdest spellings you've ever seen,
That's
and
a millennial.
and
Sorry.
it's always like a BR with a some type of lay or lee or lay.
Briar. Actually, we have a relative named Briar.
Oh, well, I like Briar. Briar's a cool name. That's a real word, right? Like, I don't know. It just seems like people are kind of making up
Breakfast.
things for their
Breakfast. That sounds
children
like a
now.
good Southern name.
Well,
Breakfast.
Scott R. Anderson has a rule that all dogs should be named either after something you can eat for breakfast or after another animal. So his dog is named Goose, but he also thinks like Bacon or Muffin are good dog names. And I think that this actually works for people too, now that we're just making up names like, like elephant or, or omelet. It's just kind of where these things should go. Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. I know who the co-hosts are going to be. They're going to be Holly, and maybe Ev Gamon is going to show up because Holly wants to debrief on her Southern accent. I don't know who the guests are going to be, but you're going to be there and I'm going to be there. And if you are joining this on
You might not be there.
I may not be there. I mean, I will, but if only to go, and we're live. If you're joining this from any of the social programs, any of the, Substack or YouTube or, you can do this every day. We do this every day on Riverside, and all you have to be is a paid subscriber to Dog Shirt Daily, and you can do this live every day, and that will drive you insane. Folks, see you tomorrow.
Oh, good to see you, Anna.
See
Oh, we're
you.
still
I will
live.
tune in to see